Well, we are honoured to be joined today by Carolyn Tastad. Thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us. It has been a great pleasure and we're extremely inspired by incredible work and actions. As young women ourselves, we can personally say that we have profited from this experience and hope that many other young women will be able to do so. So firstly, would you be so kind as to give us a brief overview of who you are, your life, where you were born, raised, main influences, and so on?
First of all, thanks for letting me do this. I appreciate that. I grew up in Canada. I was born in a very small community. I grew up in a town of probably about 100 people. My dad was a farmer. My mom was a school teacher. And I have an older brother and an older sister and a younger brother. Very, very close to my family. So I had a great childhood and an opportunity to live in a very safe and encouraging and inclusive environment. And so, you know, probably one of the biggest influences is what was really important in our family is you had to work hard. You had to work hard, you had to do your best, and that was the most important. And I think that probably had more influence than I think I even realized.
And how did this upbringing help you choose your university career, and how did it lead to your current professional path?
Yeah, this is going to be very bad advice for year 12s because I went into business and I have a computer science major within business. And I did that because I liked some of the same things that my older sister liked, and she did that. So I was very thoughtful. And I went to the school that was beside my hometown because that's what we could afford. So I only applied to one school. I went to the close one. I did business, and then I liked computer science. I liked all of the logic and the math and all of that. And it was a great choice. It's been terrific. But I think kids are so much more informed, and I think you have so many more choices today. And I think it's wonderful. Take advantage of that.
And if you were able to change this or go back in time, would you change anything? Or
you know, people ask that all the time. Like, what do you regret? What would you change? I wouldn't change anything. I think you learn from all of it, and so I don't live in regrets. I don't find it to be helpful because I don't know what to do about that. So I think it's helpful to always move forward and just take what you have and do the best with it. So I don't know what I would change. I've had a great career and tremendous opportunities, and I'm very grateful for that.
And on the note of moving forward, could you please explain to us how you joined P&G and your journey with the company?
Yeah, I joined P&G. I recruited on campus. So I applied to P&G because my friend who was in marketing, again, I was in computer science, right? My friend in marketing said, oh, you have to apply to P&G. They're this great marketer and advertisers, and they're a great company. And I said, okay, I'll apply to their IT department. And partway through the interview, as I was going through the interviewer said to me, so do you have any questions? And I said, yes, I'd like you to tell me about your IT department. And he said, why would you be interested in that? And I said, because I'm applying for a computer science role. And he said, I'm interviewing you for brand management. And I said, I don't want to do brand management. And he said, oh, I don't know if we're hiring for computer science. I'll have to check. And with that, my interview was over. Like, it was not a very amazing interview. But he phoned me about a week later and said, we are hiring for computer science, and we want you to go to Toronto and actually interview with the computer science folks. And I ended up getting the job. So it was a very inauspicious start, but it ended up pretty well.
And you talked about the different difficulties which women face in the business world. And why do you believe this is so, and how can it be solved?
I think there's tremendous opportunity for women. I really do. I believe that, and I believe there are companies very committed to it. I think the difficulties are all not all, but some of the difficulty is grounded in the assumptions that we have at large, right? We all are a product of our own biases, right? How are we socialized? What experiences did we have? What cultures did we grow up in? And so some of those biases show up in the assumptions that we have. And then the other piece that plays a role in here is what's our image of what it is today? We were having the conversation this afternoon that says, if you were going to describe a CEO, what would that person look like? And one of the students said, I think that person would be white, I think that person would be a man, and I think that person would have gone to Ivy League college. So, and this is 2018, and it came from a female student, right? So there are images that we have in our minds based on what we see in the real world, based on what we see on television and movies, and so breaking down that bias is the biggest thing we have to show people, and give them an alternate role model, give them a different and a broader reality, and I think that's a big thing that we can do to help progress women.
And how is it possible to defy these biases when many cultures don't give women basic rights?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I had this conversation with a couple of NGOs as we were talking about the work we do in advertising, and talking about how we use advertising to kind of spark conversations. And if you spark the conversation, you can kind of change mindset. And I was getting ready to do a presentation at a UN event, and I had just heard from an NGO that was doing work on changing the legal age of marriage. And I thought, what are we doing? Because this notion of advertising feels like such a first world issue relative to these people who are changing the world. They are having massive impact. And I talked to a number of our partners, and they said, no, here's the thing. We can't get some of that stuff done if people aren't open to the idea of it. And the role of advertising can make people open to other ideas. And so they reinforced for me that there's a bit of a connection here and a integration of great work that they do, amazing work, and the role that advertising can have to help open some doors. And similar to what we saw on the Ariel Share the Load, and what we've seen in other campaigns that we've had, the SK2 marriage market, it can really change how people think about it. And so that's what we as a company are so committed to doing, and that was a helpful perspective for me when we had that conversation.
And following the theme of advertising, how do you deal with any backlash if you do receive from these campaigns that they may be considered controversial?
Yeah, we try very hard to be inclusive in our approach, humble in our approach. What doesn't work is telling people something. It's really all about enlightenment or empathy. Enlightenment's probably too big a word. Empathy is a better word for it. And so if you get the insight right, you can create empathy with it, but you have to get it right, because missteps can have some backlash, and missteps backlash, or they can just not resonate. We have had some campaigns, we haven't had massive backlash. We've had mixed feedback when we did our advertising called The Talk in the US, because we came out very supportive of eliminating whatever we could for racial bias. And there are big racial biases, and there's big sectors and groups of the population that feel differently about that. And so we got some pushback. We supported gay marriage when that was going through in 2015. We got some backlash for that because some people didn't believed something different. So you can get some of that. I think you have to have conviction of your beliefs, and they have to be grounded in inclusivity. So I think that's important.
And in light of recent events, P&G has been a sponsor of the USA Gymnastics since 2013. And following the sexual abuse scandal from Larry Nassar, it seems P&G has opted not to renew the sponsorship. Right. However, a quote from USA Gymnastics stated that although our contract for the last time with Carolyn and Procter & Gamble ended in 2016 and 17 respectively, we were exploring opportunities with both companies about joining with us in further building of a culture of empowerment. Will P&G continue funding the USA Gymnastics, or shall it stop doing so? And what are your thoughts on this issue? Yeah,
at this point in time, we didn't renew our sponsorship, but again, if there's the opportunity, broadly speaking, we haven't announced anything specific at this point, so I'm not going to speculate on that. But the notion of helping people change a culture, especially a culture that would have been so fractured by that egregious acts that were going on there, it was absolutely terrible. And so if you can then help change that, if you can really remedy it and create a nurturing, inclusive culture, and if we could contribute to that, whether it would be through sponsorship or just through best practices, those are the kind of things that we would do.
And has the change in politics in the United States of America affected your work in any way?
You know, as a company, we're 180 years old as a company, and so we've seen a lot of different governments, and what's really important for us is to figure out how to work with each of them. And so that's what we have to do, right? We tend to be a very bipartisan company. We don't take political positions. We don't support, people in office. We don't come out advocating for one or the other because we have a very long history and we want to continue to have a long history. So our position continues to stay very bipartisan.
And continuing on that note, how has Procter & Gamble, or how have you in your work been able to maintain morals over financial gain?
Yeah, a couple of things. One of the things we talked about this afternoon, our company is very principled. It's part of the culture of who we are. We have very deeply ingrained values and principles and code of ethics. One of the deepest, code of ethics is how we treat our employees, how we conduct our business, and there's zero tolerance for anything off of that. And so that's the baseline requirement. And within those conditions, then we must deliver the financial obligations that we have and continue to grow the business. But the starting point is very clear expectations on how we conduct that business and how we treat our employees and stakeholders.
So those would be the key traits necessary to running a profitable and successful and moral business?
Sure.
In the 2016 report by Amnesty International, palm oil provider Wilmar International, which supplied raw materials to P&G, used 8 to 14-year-olds using child and forced labor as a source of income. Would you be so kind as to explain to us whether this is factual, and if so, how this came to be and how it may be solved?
I don't actually know if that specific case is factual. Mm-hmm. What I know is that we have set very clear expectations for our suppliers and very clear code of conducts, and if our suppliers don't behave with that code of conduct, we don't work with them. And if one of our suppliers ever misrepresented that, there would be serious consequences to that.
Okay. And how has P&G managed to maintain such a leverage in advertising, even after having saved $750 million and cutting agencies by 50%?
Yeah, I think with all parts of business, there's opportunity to optimize, right? And things get reinvented. Think about the work that you guys do, and think about social media, think about all of the things that you engage in to try to get your news and your information. And so as you look at the changes in the media landscape, and we define media very broadly, part of what every company does is optimize and reinvent business models. And so this is all just part of optimization, productivity, and reinventing business models.
And from your title, you were called Group President of North America, Selling and Market Operations Executive, Sponsor, and Gender Equality. What does this title entail?
Well, I have overall responsibility for our North America business. I work, we have 10 categories, so we have fabric care categories, that would be laundry care and fabric enhancers or fabric softeners, and we have baby care, which would be diapers and things like that, or nappies. And so we have 10 of these different categories within our company, and I see my job as in service to that, to make sure that as we bring them to market in the North America region, we do the right thing for the brands, the right thing for the consumers, the right thing for our employees. And so that's how I see my job. And that's the core of my job. I have the privilege of sponsoring gender equality as a company, and that's a passion point. So I love the work that we do. I feel really strongly about it, and I know P&G can have an impact, and so I was excited to take that on.
Continuing on gender equality, how has your extensive work experience at P&G taught you how to navigate through the world of work as a woman?
This is where I feel really fortunate that I have worked for P&G, because P&G really, one of the core values of P&G is respect for individuals. And we really take that to heart. And so I feel like I've had the opportunity to really be myself in this organization and to progress in that. And that isn't always the case, and that isn't always the case broadly in the corporate world. So I feel very fortunate.
Firstly, congratulations, and how does it feel to be on Fortune's list of most powerful women in 2015, 16, and 17?
I don't know that matters. Maybe my kids are proud.
So you don't think anything has changed, or no?
I think and I hope I'm still the same person.
And what would your advice be to young women and men for success?
That's a great question. The first thing I would say to them is find something you're really passionate about, because you have to love your work. I love my work, and I've had so many different roles at P&G, but I have, do I like it when my inbox is like packed with things? Probably not, but I love my work overall. And if I didn't, it would just be too hard. So I would say find something that you really, really love, because then you can bring your full self to that job. That career. The second thing I would say is be yourself. Because if you're not yourself, if you try to be somebody else, if you try to emulate somebody else's behavior or style, you're gonna only get part way. And if you are just yourself, your true, authentic self, you get to bring your full talents, your full skills to the effort and to your career, and that's always a better path for success.
Well, thank you very much. This is extremely interesting and enlightening.
Thank you.
For your time.
That was wonderful.